Hello, everyone, and thanks once again for joining us for Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 6th day of March, 2021. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, hosting today's show. Once again, up on the hazardous weather graphic, we've got red and warning and watch areas highlighted here. Start with the warning areas. St. Lawrence Island, blizzard warning, and that kicks into effect for Sunday through noon Monday for south winds gusting 50 to 60 miles per hour, snow blowing, snow reducing visibilities to less than a quarter mile, maybe even whiteout conditions at times. And for the Seward Peninsula, Yukon Delta, Norton Sound, as well as the Northwest Coast, that kicks into effect. That's also a blizzard warning in those areas as well for 3 p.m. Sunday afternoon until 9 p.m. Monday night. Again, winds coming up 40 to 50, gusts 55 miles an hour possible. Snow several inches expected, maybe 4 to 6 in some areas. And of course, with the winds, that'll be creating near whiteout conditions, or at least visibility less than a quarter mile at times. And for the western central Arctic coast, that's a winter storm watch out, but that's for Sunday evening through Monday afternoon. And for the Kobuk Valley, the greater Ambler area, Galena there, and down in the northern Kuskokwim Valley, McGrath, that's a winter storm watch that goes into effect late Sunday night and continues through late Monday night for possible winter storm conditions as that front moves in. Depends on, it's just a watch, not the sure thing you'll get into a warning, because it's going to weaken as the system pushes eastward, much like the one did yesterday. May not weaken as much as yesterday's did, but it'll still be definitely weakening as it pushes up against the high pressure that's slowly moving off to the east. Anyway, from there, going to satellite imagery, you can see a lot of moisture coming in, kind of the first surge moving into the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. That brought a couple inches of snow to areas of the southwest coast today. Bethel with seeing winds gusting to 26 miles an hour and 3/4 of a mile visibility in snow. And areas of light snow extend up into the Bering Strait with that band. There's a little bit of a break behind that, and then another band, actually another one just exiting the Pribilofs there, as you can see. And then a little bit more pronounced one there over the central Bering Sea, and then the main front with a big storm way back there just now affecting the western Aleutians, the low center back near Kamchatka over the Kamchatka Peninsula. Otherwise, high pressure ridging over the aloft along the west coast, slowly shifting eastward, and winds gusting 45 miles an hour at Kodiak State Airport and about 30 to 35 at Seward today with the high pressure ridge to the west. That's going to be shifting eastward tonight, so those winds already coming down both locations, especially Kodiak starting to come down now, and that'll continue to do so as the high center ridge axis moves right over the interior. But some leftover moisture with that front kept some light snow flurries going. Kenai Peninsula, but that ended over the Kenai Peninsula, south central Alaska this morning, but lingering up in the central interior, Fairbanks, Nenana, Delta Junction, carrying some very light snow into the afternoon with cloudy skies, maybe areas of the Copper River Basin as well. And then that system south of the Panhandle, staying pretty much to the south there. It'll keep a chance of moisture in over the area, but today kind of unsettled rain and snow showers with light winds there. And the interior clearing out under that ridge as it moves eastward there. Pretty widespread clearing over the north central interior to the north slope. And then that warm front, quite a warm front there, a broad area southwest flow across the Bering Sea from the Aleutians coming over the top of a ridge that's just off the chart there south of the Alaska Peninsula. And then that pretty potent low east of Kamchatka Peninsula. And blowing snow again on the increase today over the Kuskokwim Delta, and eventually that's going to already spreading northward there with, let's see, St. Michael seeing gusts to 30, 35 miles an hour and gusts to 25 miles an hour at, as I mentioned, at Bethel already, in Cape Newenham, seeing gusts to 40 miles an hour, 40 to 45 miles an hour, but temperatures into the upper 30s there, and reporting rain at last hour there with that warmer southwest flow. And it dries out for the most part, maybe not completely, but the main area of precipitation is way back with that cold front just entering the Shimiya 2 area. And from there, we'll take a look at the forecast for tonight. High pressure continues to dominate the area, actually from the Alaska Peninsula, northeastward Kodiak Island. Less wind, but still dry. Maybe a few clouds, but nothing serious. South central Alaska, variably cloudy. Should finally lose the leftover flurries and snow showers going on in the central eastern interior areas. Chance of moisture for the southern southeast coast. That front just far enough north, especially southern Prince of Wales Island, Heidelberg, maybe Klawock, Craig area. Otherwise, generally dry for the southeast coast with more clearing the farther north you go. And North Slope Arctic coast, clear. But blowing snow increasing there, St. Lawrence Island, and winds on the increase for the Pribilofs with moisture a chance of moisture right to St. Paul Island by late tonight. And then for tomorrow, that front pushes eastward, and we're into the blizzard warnings for the southwest coast, Yukon Delta, Nunivak Island, on up across Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula, and northwest coast. Blowing snow, low visibilities, and several inches, gusts anywhere from 40 to 60 miles per hour for the winds. And that's slowly beginning to push inland, but pressing the front having a weakening effect on the ridge, and the ridge having a weakening effect on the front. You can see on Monday, the high centers actually retreat back into the Northwest Territories of Canada, and now just a 994 millibar low remnant, the main low actually lifting north of the Arctic coast there into the Arctic Ocean. That's a new formation there along the frontal boundary, but still enough of a gradient, as you can see, definitely increasing the winds over the central interior to the central eastern Arctic coast, with blowing snow pushing inland to the Kuskokwim Valley, lower Yukon River Valley, and into the Kobuk Valley, northwest coast, but improving dramatically there over St. Lawrence Island, snow showers over the Aleutians. Lows tonight, mid-20s to upper 30s for the Panhandle, 10 to 15 below Copper River Basin, single numbers for the south central Alaska area, near 20 along the coast of the Kenai Peninsula, mid-20s Kodiak Island, and 5 to 10 below Tanana Valley, 15 to 20 below there for the Yukon Flats, North Slope, Eastern Arctic Coast, near 0, Western Arctic Coast, 13 at Gamble. Mid-20s Southwest Coast and mild southerly flow, upper 30s for your lows over the Eastern Aleutians, otherwise mid-20s out towards Chimianatu. And highs tomorrow afternoon, teens for the Copper River Basin, 20s to near 30 for South Central Alaska, near 40 for Kodiak, mid-30s Bristol Bay, and into the mid-40s there for the Southeast Coast. And teens, Tanana Valley, and then a little cooler, but above 0 to the North Slope and Arctic Coast, near freezing St. Lawrence Island. Mid-30s for the southwest interior, upper 30s and lower 40s for the Aleutians and Bering Sea. And the lows on Monday morning, 20s to lower 30s for the Panhandle, and still below 0 Copper River Basin, single numbers for south central Alaska, 27 for Kodiak, and below 0 northeast interior to the eastern Arctic coast, above 0 for the western interior, 20s now for Norton Sound down along the southwest coast, mid-20s at Pribilofs, lower 20s western Aleutians, upper 20s to lower 30s for the eastern Aleutians, and then the highs, 30s to lower 40s for the Panhandle, 20s to lower 30s for south central Alaska, and into the 20s in the central interior.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic for Sunday morning. VFR North Slope, Brooks Range all the way out to the Arctic coast. They pick up some marginal VFR there along Noatak Valley, northwest coast, northern Koyukuk Valley, and also from around the Fairbanks area there, down the north side of the eastern Alaska Range, and then up to just south of Eagle. VFR west of the Alaska Range there, across Copper River Basin, Prince William Sound, and marginal VFR right along the coast from Yakutat, eastern North Gulf Coast, right on down toward Dixon Entrance. Marginal VFR is slipping up into Kodiak Island. IFR, Yukon Kuskokwim Delta, Norton Sound, southern Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island, and a pretty good band extending down into the central Aleutians. And for Sunday afternoon, that whole area slowly shifts eastward there with the IFR for the Fox Islands now coming into False Pass, and Pribilofs right in the thick of it, as well as Nunivak Island, and from about just north of Kuskokwim Bay, Yukon Delta, and the western Seward Peninsula, on up to around Kivalina to Point Hope in the IFR zone. But you can see another area of VFR just to the west there, over the western Bering and Aleutians. IFR now slipping into southern Kuskokwim Valley, Iliamna Lake, and maybe into Kamishak Bay. Marginal VFR trying to increase over western Cook Inlet and covering Kodiak Island. VFR holds south central Alaska, Copper River Basin, eastern interior, as well as the north slope in the Arctic coast. Not too bad in the Panhandle, looking pretty good. Some marginal VFR along the north coast there, up to Yakutat and extreme eastern Copper River Basin. And for Monday morning, most of the Panhandle pretty good. VFR, except down south, pick up some IFR. And VFR, though, again, still holding over Cook Inlet and the Kenai Peninsula on up into the greater Fairbanks area, Nenana and those areas, as well as Copper River Basin. Then you get over the upper Tanana Valley 40 Mile Country, marginal to IFR conditions, and then generally marginal for the western interior with the IFR, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, right up the west coast there to Cape Lisburne. And better conditions there, marginal for the Pribilofs and marginal for the Aleutians. VFR for the Aleutians Monday afternoon, really shaping up out there, just about the entire Aleutian chain and western Alaska Peninsula and areas of the Bering Sea looking to be VFR with, that includes St. Lawrence Island, Nunivak Island coming into the Yukon Delta there. But IFR over just about all the western interior from the Western Brooks Range across the Kuskokwim Valley, all of the Kuskokwim Delta, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, now into southern Cook Inlet, pushing into Kachemak Bay, marginal VFR spreading in over the Kenai Peninsula, VFR in the east and north, and marginal for the southern quarter of the southeast coast. Passes tomorrow, Anatuvik and Anigan, both really nice. VFR flying through both passes, either approach Lake Clark and Merrill, conditions slowly coming down throughout the day to marginal with IFR possibly showing up, western approach of Lake Clark. And for rainy, becoming marginal VFR, especially on the western entrance, VFR out the east side. Windy stays VFR, as well as Isabel and Mentasta. Both passes VFR. Tanita, VFR. Portage, same forecast, good VFR again. And Chilcoot White, VFR. Freezing levels at the surface, Kodiak Island, North Gulf Coast, cutting across the southeast coast. And a good push of warmer air coming up 2,000 feet. You can see getting just about to the latitude of Cape Romanzoff, and 4,000 to 6,000 feet, actually 6,000 feet coming into Adak and Atka, icing with that southerly flow. We've got a zone of considerable moderate rime icing, mostly affecting the Pribilofs, with icing potential for the central and eastern Aleutians northward to the Bering Strait. And the jet stream pushing that moisture eastward, the whole pattern shifting from east to west, but southwest winds 115 knots there in the Aleutians and northwest 65 in the interior, and good southerly flow ahead of that trough that's slowly progressing eastward there, coming into the eastern Bering Sea with the strongest winds, northern Bering Sea through the Bering Strait there, and 60 to 70 knot winds from the Fox Islands northward to the Chukchi Sea. Turbulence, pretty bumpy with those windy conditions slowly advancing eastward. Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, considerable moderate chop, especially for smaller aircraft. They're from Togiak Bay into the Kuskokwim Valley, Kuskokwim Mountains, right up covering all of the northwest interior, as well as St. Lawrence Island, Yukon Delta coast, and Nunivak Island, slowly improving to the west, and pretty good, pretty smooth flying tomorrow for the eastern interior and Panhandle.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder. As you well know, you can get forecast information for any day of the week. Today, tonight, tomorrow, out to 6 or 7 days. It includes the high and low temperature, the wind direction, the chance of rain or snow in your part of Alaska. But did you know that there is information available to forecast out to 2 weeks? So the question is, how would you use that information? And here to answer that question today and tell us a lot more about climate services from the U.S. National Weather Service Alaska region is Rick Toman. He's the program manager for the Climate Science and Services. And Rick, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
How would we use information that is out to 2 weeks instead of just the high and low and the chance of rain?
Well, Dave, as we move out in time, of course, forecasts become more uncertain. So as we move into that second week from now, we're not looking at specific highs or lows or precipitation amounts at any given place. What we can do with the state of the science at this point is get a handle on patterns. So we can say things like increased chances for stormy weather in the Bering Sea in 2 weeks, or we've been in a cold weather pattern. Looks like 8 to 10 days from now, that pattern's going to change. Those are the kind of forecasts that we can currently make in that second week.
So you're increasing lead time for perhaps big or small weather events and telling us the likelihood of maybe more coastal storms or wind events in some areas?
Those are the kinds of things that that we hope to be able to let Alaskans know in the second week forecast. And if you have an activity or an event that you would find that kind of advance notice useful, whether it's moving stuff off of the beach, whether to go out hunting or to come back from camp, those kind of decisions, the week 2 provides the opportunity for you to get a handle on that kind of information.
Okay. What other type of weather impacts that we're familiar with might Alaskans use climate services for?
Well, in the forecast realm, we can go provide some information from this week 2, say the 8 to 14 day period, on out to the monthly and even seasonal time scale. Now, those monthly seasonal forecasts are still kind of just really very much pattern dependent, and the amount of detail that we can provide at this point is still pretty limited. Generally, indications of how temperature and precipitation will fall in maybe above normal, below normal kind of range. But in the week 2 period, we can be considerably more specific than that as far as the general patterns and really the impacts on Alaskans.
Okay, so we would be talking about generalizations there that would tell us that the period might be more stormy, might be more hot, more dry, more cold, and situations like that.
That's correct. So we're not going to be able to say in which community, for instance, there's the threat of coastal flooding, but we can often be able to tell we're moving into a pattern that would be conducive to big Bering Sea storms. So if you're in an area that could potentially impact you, you'll want to pay attention to the weather forecast.
Okay. Now, every day and every hour of the day, the National Weather Service is working on a forecast for the next day. But how do you start your forecast process for that extended period that goes out beyond 7 days?
Well, the way things work right now, we start off with the expected general flow pattern for Alaska and the whole world, really, and then we narrow that down to Alaska. So we start off with the basic computer model forecast. There's quite a few different computer models that we look at, bring those together. And then another important part of that is we attempt to assess the confidence. The reality is often 2 weeks away, the computer models are very divergent. They have lots of different solutions, and that's an indication that we don't have much confidence. But when we see more agreement in that time frame, and when that agreement is a pattern that will be potentially very impactful for Alaska or is a big change from what we've been in, that's when we can then take that expected pattern. We have computer models forecasting it. We've assessed the confidence. Now we can move that forward. How, using our experience as Alaskan weather forecasters, how does that typically play out for Alaska? So is this a stormy pattern for the Bering Sea? Is this an extra rainy period for Southeast? Is this the kind of pattern that generates strong winds potentially in the Anchorage Bowl? Is this a deep cold pattern for the interior? All of those are the kind of things that we're looking at in these large-scale patterns. That's very different than telling you that the winds on 10 days from now are going to be gusting to 120 on the hillside. We're looking for patterns, not the very specific information that the Weather Service will then hone in on as the event gets closer.
So the idea is to keep the 5, 6, 7 day forecast the same, where you are getting the standard high and low temperature and the chance of wind or rain, but further out you get a broad general forecast, but as the time gets closer to that event, we'll get a lot more specific.
That's correct.
Okay, very good. So how can people use this information if I am out in the bush and I want to see, is a coastal storm expected in my region, or is a chance for that improving over the next 2 to 3 weeks? Where could I go to get information like that?
When we see that potentially impactful or a big change in the weather is coming 8 to 14 days out, typically we will start to highlight that on the Weather Service Facebook site. We might produce a YouTube video highlighting that, linking that on our Facebook site. So often at this point, we don't have much to say in that because we're really looking for those forecasts of opportunities. But one thing we can say very likely as we go through the next 2 or 3 years, there'll be more and more of this kind of forecast information available in that week 2 time frame.
Okay, and something that emergency managers and city planners and folks in villages might be interested in keeping an eye out for, looking for that information to be headlined, whether that's on social media or perhaps through the National Weather Service channels there to get information from you to make better plans a little bit longer term and make better preparations in the event that things become a little bit more unsettled.
Absolutely. Climate Services with the National Weather Service Alaska region is talking to the state of Alaska every week, apprising them of that 2-week outlook. And on the social media side, we are working to keep Alaskans informed so that when we think we have some confidence in a high impact or a big change, that's the best way right now for folks to find out about that. Twitter, Facebook, so stay tuned to your National Weather Service.
Very good, a developing program. Rick Toman with the National Weather Service Alaska region. He's a Climate Science and Services Program Manager. Thanks so much for joining us again, Rick, and I hope to have you back again soon.
Great, thanks, Dave.
For another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at the coastal water forecast for the south coast of the Panhandle, we've got east-northeast winds in the forecast for Sunday at 20 knots, 12 to 13-foot seas. Lighter winds up to the north coast, north to northeast at 15 knots, 9 to 11-foot seas. Lynn Canal will be the windiest area there, north 25 for small craft advisories and gale force gusts to 40 knots. Stevens Passage north at 15, Clarence Strait southeast 15 knots. And for Monday, even lighter winds in store for the outer coastline, northwest at 10. There for the south coast and the north coast, south to west winds at 10 knots with seas not bad, 6 to 8 feet. Lynn Canal winds coming down to 15 out of the north with 4-foot seas. About the same forecast there for Stevens Passage as Lynn Canal and Clarence Strait. Light northwest breeze at 10 knots, seas 2 feet. Prince William Sound, northerlies tomorrow, 20 knots with 3-foot seas, and north 20 for the North Gulf Coast. Still some gale force gusts coming out of the Copper River Delta to 35 knots. Otherwise, seas running 5 to 6 feet. Small craft advisories for the Barren Islands. Northwest 25 knots with 7-foot seas. Kamishak Bay, northwest at 20, seas 5 feet. Cook Inlet, northerlies 10 to 15 knots. Seas in the ice-free waters 1 to 3 feet. And for Monday, light northeast breeze at 10 knots north of the Forelands and call it 15 knots out of the northeast for southern Cook Inlet. Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands, 30-knot winds from the southeast for Kamishak Bay. Barren Islands south at 30. And for the North Gulf Coast, small craft advisories, southeast winds 25 knots, seas 6 feet. And Prince William Sound looking at an east wind at 15 knots with seas right around 3 feet. Kodiak Island, northwesterlies tomorrow coming down 25 knots with seas at 8 feet and west 20 for Kachemak Bay. And then good gales coming into the Alaska Peninsula from the south-southeast, increasing to 40 knots slowly from west to east across the peninsula. Seas 10 to 12 feet, southeast 20 for Bristol Bay. And then gale warnings for Bristol Bay on Monday, southwest 30 knots, seas 7 feet. Also gale warnings south side of the Alaska Peninsula from the west, Castle Cape or Cape Sarachev to Castle Cape at 35 knots, and the Bering Sea side of the peninsula southwest at 30. Southwest winds 30 knots there, Castle Cape to Sitkinak, 20 knots from the south Chillicothe Strait. East side of Kodiak, south at 30 with 11-foot seas. And for Unalaska Island, south to southeast gales tomorrow, 40 knots, 14 to 16-foot seas. Unmac Island, southerlies at 40 knots. Adak and Atka, small craft advisory, southwest at 30. West 30, Amchitka Island, and 35-knot gales for the area from Kiska to Shemya out of the west. Westerlies from Shemya all the way to Amchitka and into the central Aleutians at 30 knots, and then also west winds 30 knots into Unmac Island, Unalaska Island, west-southwest 25, 13-foot seas. And full gales here for the Bering Sea tomorrow, Pribilofs and St. Matthew Island, as well as the Yukon Delta Coast and St. Lawrence Island, all looking at 40-knot winds from the south and seas 17 to 20 feet there south of the ice edge, and gale warnings for 35 knot southerlies there for the southwest coast south of Nunivak Island, south winds 30 knots for Norton Sound. That holds through Monday there for Norton Sound, south winds 30 knots, but diminishing winds out to the west, west 25 for St. Lawrence Island, southwest 20 to 30 knots for the southwest coast, Pribilofs west at 30, and St. Matthew Island west 25. Eastern Boulevard Sea Coast, east southeasterlies tomorrow, just 10 to 15 knots, and then call it 20 knots out of the southeast on the central coast. Brisk wind advisories there for the west side, out of the east at 25. High-end gales from Cape Beaufort all the way down to Wales, southeast 45 knots. And then for Monday, those swing around minimum gales out of the west-northwest, 35 knots, southeast 30 for the western Arctic coast. Gale warnings on the central coast, southeast 35 knots. Brisk wind advisories for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast at 30 knots. And for tonight, big storm pushing into the Bering Sea. Active front there bringing southerly winds and warmer temperatures northward with us behind the warm front. Warm front moisture will shift from the Kuskokwim Delta today up into Norton Sound and the northwest coast tonight, overnight tonight, as high pressure slowly shifts eastward over the eastern Alaska Range Tanana Valley, but dominates much of the central and northern interior, as well as the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island. Risk of some moisture with that front near the Panhandle, but tomorrow, blizzard warnings out for the Yukon-Kuskokwim, or for the Kuskokwim Delta, or for the Yukon Delta coast, Nunivak Island, St. Lawrence Island, and the northwest coast. Winter storm watches for the western Arctic coast for Sunday night through Monday. Winter storm watches also in the interior as that system slowly pushes eastward and slowly weakens, dry over the interior and Panhandle.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.